Scott Duffy, welcome to Listening with Leaders. You are the co-founder and CEO of Courus, which can be,
Yes.
and I'm going to spell that because it's an unusual spelling, Courus,
Yes.
and that can be found at Courus, Courus.ai. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Give us a little bit of backstory to get us started. Who are you? Let's start off with who you are.
Oh my goodness. Well, I'm a SoCal guy. I live today in Newport Beach, California. Look, as a young guy, I went to college down in San Diego, University of San Diego. And in my junior year, I was on a fraternity trip down in Mexico, got in this crazy car accident, 2 brain hemorrhages, and ended up dropping out of school while I was recovering. And while I did, a funny thing happened. My roommate came in and said, my dad thinks you should listen to this, and gave me a motivational book on tape. And before I knew it, I had a library. And as I got better, I decided I wanted to go back to college and an intern for anybody I listened to. And the first person I applied to intern for was Tony Robbins.
Wow.
And instead, I was offered a job. And so I started working for Tony Robbins Research when I was 20. I think he was 30. And yeah. Like it was cool. It was really early on, and had the chance to work for that group and for Jim Rohn and promote Les Brown and some of the kind of the bigger personal development speakers at that time. Shifted into tech in my mid-20s. I was really early in consumer internet, was in leadership roles, startup teams of what became CBSSports.com, NBC Internet, launched FoxSports.com with Ross Levinson, then started a company like Expedia for private jets that I sold to Virgin, ran for Richard Branson in that group for a couple of years. And, I just think more than anything else, I'm super passionate about entrepreneurship and creating companies and businesses and environments where everybody wins.
And what are you doing today?
So today I'm the founder and CEO of Courus, and Courus is an AI and machine learning company that helps creators build really the most powerful online courses on the planet. And the reason that we do is we focus on tackling the biggest problem in e-learning, which is this: it's low completion rates.
Yeah, we were talking about that.
It's crazy. So last year, over $300 billion was spent on online courses, but the average course completion rate is only 3.1%.
Why is that?
Well, it's crazy. The main reason is that when you take a look at kind of what motivates people to come to class or come to a course and ascend and complete, the motivation factors are super obvious when you're offline. So like if you go to college, like, I'm here in Southern California, let's say I was at USC or UCLA or USD, I'm paying tuition. And so there's pressure, there's financial pressure on for me to come to class and to finish a course and move on. I want to get a job. That creates motivation for me to complete. I might have to go to class in order to ask the teachers questions, or if I'm bored in class, I might want to get up, but everyone looks at me and there's social pressure to sit down. And the thing is, none of those motivational factors apply when we're online. And so what happens is people build stuff that they think the other people, learners, should learn or need to learn. And they're not building what they want to learn. And what we've been able to do through this AI and machine learning and behavioral science is really help people identify what is it, who their target learner is, and what is going to motivate them to ascend and complete a course. And, we're seeing completion rates around 65% right now.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a huge delta. So how now you got my attention, being an online course creator myself.
Yeah.
What is it that your system does that gets that massive change?
Well, the first thing that we do is we listen. See,
now
right?
you're talking my language.
Because like I said, what happens is most people, and I'm talking about colleges, I'm talking about, corporations, I'm talking about skills-based trainers, they're building, again, what they know or what they think someone should learn, not necessarily what they want to learn. What we do is we find out who your target learner is. Who do you believe your target learner is?
I
And
would say, if I were to answer that question, I'd say every human on the planet needs to learn what I teach.
needs to learn. Okay, but let's say you were building a very specific course, right?
Niche, right?
Right. And so, and by the way, I agree. Everybody needs to learn what it is that you teach and how to have hard conversations and how to create peace and all that kind of stuff is so important. And so what we do is we find out who the customer thinks their target learner is. And then what we do is we go out on the internet and we find where that customer or that target learner is spending their time. And they're having open and honest conversations, communities, chat forums, certain websites, social media. And we pull literally tens of thousands of direct quotes. And with those quotes, we start to identify patterns and we put those into a model. And so we'll start with tens of thousands of quotes as an example, and we'll come up with the most common 150 things that people are saying. We put that into a model. And we do sympathy and we do empathy analysis and sentiment analysis. And then we put that into, so at the end of the day, what we're able to tell you is exactly who your target learner is, not who you think they are. What that target learner wants to learn, not what you think they have to learn and why. And then we teach you exactly how to structure your course as a result for e-learning completion.
That is amazing. And of course, you're able to do it because you've got AI out there combing the internet for all the data and making sense of it.
Yeah, so here's what's crazy. So my co-founder, Joe DeMaria, he ran a process. He's been in e-learning for over a decade. About 8 years ago, he became obsessed with solving this problem around completion rates. And he developed this behavioral science that he started using back then. And over time, he's refined it. Now, let's say it takes Joe and his team 3 people a month in order to come to the conclusions that we come to. Today, we're able to do that with 1 person in 15 seconds. It's incredible. It's really incredible. Yeah.
I know. I mean, I've been playing around with ChatGPT and I've gotten some amazing results from it.
Yeah. I mean, ChatGPT is incredible. But again, if we go back to listening,
right.
What's interesting about ChatGPT is you have a lot of people that are building companies on top of ChatGPT by simply pulling data.
Right.
So they'll want to write an article, or they'll want to write a course, or they'll as examples. And what ChatGPT can do is provide general information back. And what's happening, so I call that fast content, and a lot of it is awesome. But what happens is, because that content isn't connected to the listener.
I got it.
What we believe is going to happen over the next 4 or 5 years is you're going to see completion rates really drop as a result, because the content won't be aligned with the user's motivation.
Yeah, anything generated by ChatGPT is simply a reflection of the interrogatories put in by you. And that's the point that you're making.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So you've got this system where somebody comes to you and says, I got this idea for a course, help me with it. They go in, the analysis is done, and then all of a sudden you get a sense that there's a market there or there isn't a market there.
Mm-hmm.
That's huge. And then all of a sudden you understand how a course should be structured to meet the desires of the market.
That's right. And then we have other products where we can actually write it and optimize it for you when it's up and things like that. But the key thing, because your question was, why are completion rates so low? And the simple answer is people aren't listening.
That's right. The creators are not listening to the.
That's right.
So they're not creating something that is emotionally compelling to the student.
You know, it's like, I had a conversation a couple of years ago with Gary Vee, and we were talking about, I asked him the question, I said, what do you think what's the biggest problem that entrepreneurs have today? Like the biggest mistake that they make today? And he looked at me and he didn't hesitate. He said, they disrespect the market. And I said, what does disrespect the market mean to you? And he said, what they do is they have an idea and then they go in their room and they go and they build it, and then they put it out there. And then they wonder why it doesn't do well. And the reason is they haven't asked anyone, right? They haven't asked the market what it wants and how they want it.
Right. This is a really common problem.
Yeah.
And I know that when I wrote my 4th book, De-Escalate, I had made that mistake with my first 3 books. They're great
Ah,
books, right?
yeah.
But they didn't commercially, they were failures. De-escalate's been successful. But that's what I did. I went out into the market and did a lot of research before I started writing it. And as a result of that, I think because the book has done very well.
Yeah. That's awesome.
So what kind of people come to Courus?
Well, so we talked to, yeah, so our customers are colleges and universities, they're corporate learning and development departments, skills-based trainers, really anyone that wants to build a course. And what we find like to be the most exciting is the pace. Like I've been around, the first, I guess, internet company I was a part of founding was back in 1990. The internet became commercial in October of 94 around then. And it was about 2 months later that we started our first one. Been around this forever. But the thing that is really amazing is when you take a look at how fast the AI is learning, and you take a look at tools like LangChain, and you take a look at these communities or these open source communities where developers are contributing, like the speed at which this stuff is moving is just, it's mind-blowing.
There's a lot of people saying this is worrisome. What do you think?
So I think that, for example, AI is gonna put to rest a lot of jobs, but I think it's also going to create a ton of new jobs as well.
Like everything else, it's going to be very disruptive.
It's going to be very disruptive, and I think that when things are disruptive, it's like what we have to do is what a lot of people do is they get on their heels, right? And they're afraid of it, and we have to get on our toes. So when I was young, my family was in we were in the engraving business. So most people today, like especially young kids, won't know what that is, but basically think of it as the printing business. And my great grandfather started a company, and they made ads for magazines and billboards, and that was before computers. And there was this incredible craft around creating that stuff. These tradesmen and women that with sticks and glue and pictures would assemble these ads, and they would make them, and then they would be printed. It was incredible. So when I started working in the business, I was probably about 19. It was after college. So my early 20s, I worked in it for a little bit. And the way you made money in that industry was you would have basically, let's say, an ad that you created. An agency would give you a bunch of pictures. They throw it in a box and say, make this thing. And you do it. And you take it back to the agency, and they would look at it, and they'd say, move this there, make this color a little different, move things around. All your money was in corrections.
Wow.
All about corrections. So here's the thing. When I was working for the company, it got its first Mac. The Mac came out, and there was no place to put it. And on one side of the building was where the sales was and the customer service. On the other side was where they made everything, production. And there was a hall in between. And they had no place to put this guy. So they literally put a desk with a Mac on it in the hall that people used to walk down. And it was crazy because some people would look at it, and it was like they would pretend it wasn't even there. And other people would be like, hey, that's super cool. And and people who were like super cool, a couple of them went out and they started like the first like digital agencies that did digital printing with a Mac. And the other people, many of them were put out of business in like under 5 years. And so I think that it's just really important with technology and with something like AI to really just get on your toes and not on your heels, and it's going to put you in a better position.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. So what is it that gets you excited every morning? Get out of bed and go to work. Besides living in beautiful Newport Beach.
Well, I think, I mean, it's going to sound, really corny and stuff like that. I think it's my kids that motivate me more than anything. Yeah. I have a 13 and 14-year-old daughters, so that's really cool. I think that though, I really believe though, from a business standpoint, what really excites me is that I believe that by helping more people to complete courses, certifications, articles, things like that, I think we have the opportunity to change the lives of the welfare of millions of people all around the world, because it starts with completion. It starts with like getting the thing right. And what's really exciting is I was raised thinking there was like one path to success. I was taught I had to get good grades in grammar school, good grades in high school to get into a good college, to get a good job. And today we have so many options. And I think that what's exciting about tomorrow, this is what really excites me, is that companies, corporations are going to play a much bigger role in education. And here's what I mean. What I mean is this: if I want to be a video game developer, I don't need to go to a 4-year college. I can go to Amazon Academy, or I'm sorry, Activision Academy for video game development and get a certification, right? For me, it's a win. I'm learning exactly what I want to learn. For them, they're building their future workforce. If I want to be a social media manager, go to TikTok Academy for social media management. If I want to get into video production, go to like Twitch Academy for video production. So I think that the barrier to entry to get great education for something that we really want to do and we really love is gonna be wiped away.
Right.
And I think that's like, that excites me.
I wonder how traditional 4-year institutions, 2 and 4-year institutions, undergraduate schools are going to roll with all of this.
Well, so we work with them every day. And so it's interesting because there's clearly like, especially since COVID, a huge transition in their focus to online learning. But I think that in the education space, no one is really certain. And I think a lot of people are fearful about what it's going to look like in 5 years, that are big players like in the space, in the industry, in the category. So for example, if everyone can make a course on ChatGPT, then what's the value of a course anymore?
Right.
You know, is there a different kind of way, in the same way that TikTok, right, changed the way that people liked, especially young people, like to view content in these short snippets and with video? Is there a new way or a new format for education that we just don't know of yet that's going to emerge? But I believe this more than anything. I believe that in the next 10 years, the biggest online company in the entire world is going to be an education company, and nobody's heard of it yet.
Really?
Yes.
Well, it may, in a way, it makes sense to me. We're seeing the failing of our public educational institutions, a bunch of different reasons. And there's been a decline going on for many, many years. I've taught law for 30 years, and I'm the chair of our local law school. And I mean, we are constantly moaning about the fact that young people coming into law school are illiterate, literally. Really teach them remedial writing and reading. Which in my day was, no, I mean, you hit the ground running. And I really do think that that raises another thought. During the pandemic, we all had to pivot. And in the law school world, we were talking about, well, what's going to happen to law school? Why would you have a order school when you could take a contracts course and listen to contracts lectures from the greatest professors at Harvard? And Harvard could broadcast this stuff. You may not get a Harvard degree, but you get the education. And so I think you're right. I think that the barrier to education is going to go away. It can be delivered to anybody who has a tablet or a smartphone or a computer, and there'll be a cost associated with it, but the cost will be picked up in many different ways. I think,
and to add to what you're saying, I think another thing that's hard, it's gonna be hard, is when developing curriculum, and because we have these models that have been in place for so long, right? We have institutions that are so deeply entrenched. Look, my young girls, when I went to school, it was all about memorization.
Right.
And my girls laugh at memorization. They're like, why do we have to memorize it when we can just Google it?
Right. We need to know how to think and discern.
Yes.
We need to know how to research, and we need to know how to do critical thinking. That's what they need. And of course, that's the hardest thing to teach, because it's so labor intensive. It's labor intensive. And that's what's not being taught in schools right now.
You're right.
Very little critical thinking. And yet that's the key. That's going to be one of the key skills of in the upcoming decades. So you got any critical thinking courses that you're lining up?
We have to run our listener to see what people want around critical thinking courses.
Yeah. That's interesting. So what's unique about you that you bring to the table for Courus rather?
I think I approach the game like it's the first time I played it every day. That's what I strive for. And I think that today as an entrepreneur, so I had an opportunity. I'm a huge basketball fan. I'm a huge Laker fan. And a few years ago, I had the opportunity to do something that Phil Jackson was a part of. And asking the question, what is it? What is it that makes a difference between Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant? So back then, like number one, number two that ever played the game and everybody else. And his answer was really quick. And it was Shoshin. It's one word, Shoshin, Shoshin.
Japanese.
It's a word. It's a word that's used in Buddhism all the time. And Shoshin means this, beginner's mind. And he said that every single day when those guys stepped on the court, they were different than anyone else I ever saw play. He said, because they approached it like it was the first time they ever played the game. As a result, because they were willing to do that, they were able to see things and make distinctions that nobody else could make, the little things, right? And so I think that really applies today. I think as entrepreneurs, I think that, and business people, just anyone today, with the world changing as fast as it is now, and is going to be over the next 10 years, we have to have the openness to look at things completely open and be able to forget everything that we learned yesterday because it's different today.
That's right.
And I really think that the skill that's going to be gold over the next 10 years is our ability to adapt.
And I absolutely agree. And I'm surprised I didn't recognize Shoshin, the beginner's mind, because that's a philosophy that I embody every day. Every day I'm learning something new. If I'm not a beginner at something, I'm always a beginner at something.
Yeah.
Even if it's something like I play jazz violin, I'm always a beginner at jazz violin. There's always something new to learn.
Yeah.
But what I have found as a teacher and an educator, and I've taught, I'm a level 3 certified ski instructor. I'm a secondary black belt. So I've taught skiing, martial arts. I've taught law. I've taught in graduate psychology programs to PhD students. So I've done a lot of teaching. And what I have found is that there are many adults who are afraid of learning.
Oh, yeah.
They're afraid, they have a trained incapacity. This is from Thorstein Veblen, a philosopher back in the beginning of the 20th century. We have a trained incapacity. We learn our expertise, our professional expertise, and if we go outside the guardrails, that's bad. And so people are unwilling to be incompetent.
Yes.
The period of time it takes to develop competence, because it's
afraid of it. Yeah.
And I think that's something that people are going to have to overcome, because I reinvented myself probably 4 or 5 times in my life. And I think people are going to start reinventing themselves every decade, if not more often.
So I just read something a couple of weeks ago, and it was that the average man in the United States 100 years ago in 1923 lived to be 53 years old. I'm 53. That freaks me out. Now, maybe so here's the thing. Maybe back then, being good at one thing was good enough.
Yeah.
And that's what's hard is that we've gone from, it seems like in just a generation or two, from one thing being good enough to now all of a sudden we need to reinvent ourselves 4 times in our lives or 5 times or whatever it is.
Yeah. I think that's going to be the big challenge for young people coming up. And so the educational system has to teach them how to teach themselves. So they can learn, they're lifelong learners, and they have to learn how to learn. And they have to
learn how to learn.
To jump into something they've never seen before and say, I can do this.
Yeah.
I know how to learn. I know what it's going to take. I'm going to put the effort in to get it done.
And everyone will have access to the tools that they need.
That's right.
Because of technology. Everyone will have access to quick data. but it doesn't matter if you don't learn how to learn.
That's right.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think that's the big thing. And I think that's the point your daughters were making. Why do I have to memorize? I can look stuff up. I need to learn how to learn.
Well, yeah. And then in the school, I mean, you look at it, just, 10, 15 years ago, none of the schools around here allowed you to bring a calculator to class.
Right.
Now they're trying to have kids not use ChatGPT. And so what my 14-year-old, she's really entrepreneurial, and we were talking not that long ago, and she was telling me she was frustrated with something in one of her classes and how kids were getting in trouble, and it was because they had started on their phones to use ChatGPT.
Oh, wow.
For things in class. And can you imagine what like a threat or a change that is to the teacher?
Oh, yeah.
Like, how do you reorganize the way, how do you learn to learn, or learn to teach in a way that actually uses those tools?
I think we could spend hours on this one, but
yeah,
we don't have a lot more time, but I'll just give you my quick hit on that.
Yeah.
That's where critical thinking comes in, because I learned that you get what you ask for. And with ChatGPT, you learn how to ask the really interesting questions. You learn how to then refine the questions with the data that you get back, and you got to think about, is this the answer that I really want? How can I make this better?
Yeah.
What's the next inquiry I can make to get the better result? To optimize, it's the human brain optimizing the result it's getting from ChatGPT. That's high level critical thinking. So that's, if I were a teacher, that's what I would be doing. I would say, let's be using ChatGPT, and then I would be taking my students on topics that they don't know anything about. I would say something like, all right, I want you to all go into your computers and ChatGPT, and I want you to see if you can get me a 1,000-word essay on quantum mechanics.
Yeah.
Now we start refining it.
Yeah.
And they don't know anything about quantum mechanics. But then by the end of the class, not only do they know a lot about quantum mechanics, they also have learned how to refine the inquiry to get better answers. That's how I would use it.
If anyone who's listening is looking for a new career, speaking of what you're talking about, asking the right questions. So one of the highest paying new jobs created as a result of AI in the last 6 months is a prompt engineer.
Wow.
A prompt engineer is the person that is the best at asking it questions. That's your job. Yeah.
Well, when I was a trial lawyer, that was my job. Ask questions.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Maybe,
so you would be the perfect candidate to become a prompt engineer.
There you go. I'd rather teach prompt engineers.
Yeah, I get it.
Well, Scott, this has been a great conversation. We're at the end. I have one more question for you. What is one thing about you that we would never know about unless you revealed it to us?
Whew. How about when I worked for Tony Robbins, I did a 37-foot firewalk across hot coals.
Holy moly. That's a good one. And survived.
And survived, yeah. Didn't get burned.
That's great. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Scott. It's been wonderful.
Thank you so much for having me.